Hi everyone, it's Emmy at TFL Car. Welcome to another episode of TFLtalk. What's going on, Nathan?
Yeah, I'm Nathan. Actually, we were going to do a little role play here. It was going to be Emmy saying, I'm the...
that's right, I have the Czech Tatra car. Do you know what year this one is? Like
60
something.
4-ish.
It looks a lot like the one that we're going to be driving across the country.
Here's the role play. Ready?
Like this.
I'm telling you now.
Yeah, you have to imagine the tow
wait. Flames. While it's being towed. Sorry, I know it's Roman's dream too.
I know, but you know, Roman just bought this used Tatra in Czechoslovakia, and just today, I just picked up a 2004 Mazda Speed Miata with 10,000 miles on it.
Right here, congratulations.
I'm so excited. So those of you who always think that, you know, I don't know what I'm talking about because I only drive a 2001, well now I drive a 2004 Turbo, so you can...
Yes. So, what we're going to talk about today, used cars. We're specifically talking about a few things that might help some of you who've never tried to shop for a car before, or more importantly, maybe are lacking in experience, to, you know, bone up a little bit on what we know, and maybe it'll help.
So the first thing that you want to ask when you talk to the owner of the car, or whoever is selling the car, is who owned this car before? What is that person like? Was it a 22-year-old fraternity brother, or was it a 65-year-old little old lady with a cane?
Now, with that being said, first of all, teenagers owning cars usually means it's been slightly abused. That's only because of learning about driving. But then again, older people over 65 can be very abusive to cars. And you may find one that kind of rides like this, and for them it's totally normal because that's how they walk with their walker or whatever.
Right, I don't want to make generalizations about how little old ladies drive or about how young men drive, but at the same time, you will find some truth across that generally young men are harder on the cars and little old ladies tend to drive them a little bit slower.
And they usually put very few miles on them.
Correct.
And miles is part of the game here, but not the entire game. I mean, look, little old lady who takes care of the car, puts 100,000 miles on it. Teenage kid who drives the crap out of it, goes to Tijuana, lights it on fire a few times, and puts 20,000 miles on it. Well, obviously there's a difference.
Right. So you definitely want to know who was a previous owner, what kind of a driver were they. Mm-hmm. And of course, you have to inspect this car. Now, some people are not great renters. Some people, they just like to drive. They don't really know a lot about the mechanics of the car. Yeah. So... Now, you can always take this used car somewhere and pay someone else to put it up on the lift and inspect it.
That's right. Now, look, I know a lot of you are saying, but I don't know a mechanic. Okay, there are a lot of places, Pep Boys, whatnot, that you can go and actually pay a small fee and bring a car in and have them inspect it. They'll do a certain inspection, and in many cases, it's a very affordable, 50, 60 bucks, whatever it might be. Local mechanics, in many cases, will do that as well. And especially if you're telling them, look, I may buy this car. This may be a car you're servicing in the future. Mm-hmm. That's great. They'll be into it. At the same time, you got to make sure this is a reputable mechanic. Otherwise, they're going to look at it and go, oh, yeah, it's fine, after he loosens the drive shaft or whatever. So obviously it's something that you need to check into. But if you don't know about mechanics, if you don't know what you're looking at with the car, then by all means, either bring somebody who does or bring it to a mechanic.
Yeah, I mean, when I just bought this car, I bought it from the place where this car was serviced, so they had a lift. So I said, can you put it up on the lift? So I was able to look for any rust in the undercarriage. I was able to look at the suspension components, make sure that I didn't have any broken springs, that the shock still looked good, that nothing was leaking. And I mean, I'm not a mechanic by any stretch of the imagination, but at least, you know, I know enough to look at it and look for any obvious damage.
That's right. And the first thing you really want to do is look at the things that are combustible, things that can go away, that can be burnt off, that can be rotted off. Belts, tires, fluids, things like that. Things that, well, frankly, if they're exposed to elements, eventually do get bad.
Yeah, and even if a car has been garaged, my new baby has been garaged for the past 10 years. That doesn't mean that some of those components don't go bad. So I made sure that I checked the timing belt. I made sure that I, before I even got in the car, I checked the oil, made sure the oil was nice and clean, made sure that there was fluid in the radiator, and then I looked at the overflow, and whoops, there's no coolant in the overflow. So right away I was like, hey, come on, you guys gotta, you know, make this better for me right here. was also, as far as the tires go, you know, this was something that I didn't know. Andre was able to clue me in on this. All tires will have the date that they were manufactured.
Yep.
So I know from looking at these tires, I've got, on this new car, I've got Falcon All Seasons, but they were put on the car about 7 years ago. So, I mean, the tread is still good on them, but I'm assuming now that the tires are going to be the first thing that I replace, because 7 years is a long time for a pair of tires to be sitting.
And it makes a big difference whether or not the car was stored inside or outside, especially in places where it's arid, because you can have cracks on the tires. One place to look for cracks, by the way, is on the air stem. You look there to make sure that there are no cracks, because it's a very good indication showing that this is a car that's been exposed to a lot of UV or abuse or whatever it may be. So you may have old tires and they may look fantastic, but there could be problems. One of the best things you can do is to have them inspected. Some of the larger tire dealers out there are fairly reputable. I would recommend going to them to see whether or not there's dry rot, or perhaps, well, nowadays retreads are really rare, but you know, if they're retreads, which I never recommend, maybe that's something you should look at as well.
And of course, you also want to look at the body of the car. I mean, this is a no-brainer, right? You want to make sure, is there a ginormous dent in it? Is there any Bondo? Is there, you know, you're never going to find the perfect used car, y'all, because it's used. So, for example, this car that I just bought today, I mean, yeah, there's a couple of scratches on it. There's a little ding on the trunk. There's a point on the front where this little old lady got a little familiar with the curb. But that's okay, because mechanically the rest of it is really, really good. So you don't inspect the areas where the body pieces come together. And if on one side there's a gap that's, you know, 1/4 of an inch, and on the next side, the other side, the gap is only 1/8 of an inch, well, something happened on that panel. So you want to make sure that you actually do a nice visual inspection of it and make sure that everything is looking good. There's no Bondo, there's no rust.
Absolutely. And I'm going to add to that with the interior. Now, a lot of you out there do not like to buy vehicles that are owned by smokers. Neither do I. It tempts me to fire up a cigar while I'm driving it, which I only do in people's cars that I borrow.
You're never borrowing my car.
Here's a quick tip for you about that. I used to have to buy cars for auctions and whatnot, and two things that I would do. One is the ashtray in most vehicles will pop right out, and in many cases, if they've been smoking in there and then they decided to clean it up, they'll clean the outside of it, but when you lift it up, you'll find ash and some debris underneath. That's right. Ash gets very, very fine. It becomes like basically a powder, and you can tell it's in there. You lift up the ashtray, look in there, and smell. You'll smell ash.
Yeah.
The other thing is up on the side of the door where the window guide is. If you look in there and actually feel and pull it just a little bit, what you might be able to see is some discoloration. If it's slightly gray in some areas, that's because somebody was flicking their cigarette out the window while they were driving. A little bit won't stay, but a lot of it, if they do it often.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, that's a super great tip. I've never even thought of that.
Yeah. Oh, and
Nathan's top tip.
Once again, this is my old school stuff of buying cars.
Nathan is the Cliff Clavin of TFL car, by the way. He kind of knows a lot about everything, or a little about everything.
A little bit about a little. Trust me, enough people out there think I know nothing about nothing. Oh, and finally, of course, look for burns on the seat, and of course, the headliner. If you're smoking, one of the things you might do is put your arm up, and then you'll put holes in the top. I rarely recommend cars for people who, from people who've been smokers, because you do have that odor come back later on. So
it's just terrible.
Something to keep in mind.
Yeah. And also, when you're in the interior, make sure that everything works. I mean, sometimes you get so excited about, I just found the perfect car and it's a great price and I'm so excited, and then you never turn on the air conditioning, or you never turn on the headlights, or you never try the defroster, and then the next thing you know, you go to use it and you're like, well, crap, this sucks. So make sure that you get all the features and make sure that they're all working. Now, fortunately, in this little Miata, like, there's no features.
5 buttons.
Yeah, that's it. So for me, it was really easy, but I'm super stoked because my air conditioning works, which in my old one, in my 2001, it wasn't working very well.
Well, you got a convertible, it doesn't even matter. But it's true, though. She's absolutely, even in the middle of winter, fire up the air conditioner, make sure it's blowing cold. And if it's not, then ask why. I mean, maybe the condenser has a problem. Maybe it just hasn't had fluid, thrown through the system.
Yeah, it could be something really easy, just a little, repressurization with the Freon, or it could be the indicator of something worse.
Whatever they call it now. They no longer call it Freon. Apparently, that's politically incorrect, and PETA's going to come after us with.
Why? What is it? Air conditioning. Cold stuff?
Yeah, it's new cold stuff.
New cold
stuff.
That's what it is. It's new cold stuff.
Now, there are a couple of additional tips. I wanted to throw one at you right now, and that is vehicles tend to leak when they're used. That's just how it is. But they don't usually, on car lots especially, like having them sit over large puddles of where they've been leaking. So what they'll do is move the car over maybe a spot or two, especially if they know you're coming. Here's the thing. First of all, if the car's been warmed up, there may be a reason for that, and you need to ask why it's been warmed up. Sometimes cars, when they're first started, you can hear things rattling and the rattle goes away once they're warm. That could be an indication of a problem. Second, if the car has been moved, and a very good chance that it has been, get a newspaper or a piece of cardboard or something and slide it underneath the car, something that you could do very quietly on your own, and fire up the car and let it run for a little while. What happens is, especially if the engine's a little bit on the cold side, is metal tends to expand and contract with heat and cold. So if there are any drips that you're going to discover later, it's a good chance you can discover them in advance while you're there on the lot or at somebody's house as you're letting it run. Let it run for 15-20 minutes. And while you're doing all your other checks, right? Before you drive off. Then go pull the paper out and you can see, oh, okay, it's leaking from the front. It could be A, B, and C, or it's leaking from the back. It could be a main seal or whatever. The point is that you're going to be able to ascertain, okay, there are some problems here we didn't know about and that they're covering up.
Yeah. Good job. Good job, Nathan.
Yeah, once again, knuckle bump. Yay.
That's it for today. Thanks so much for hanging out here at a TFL Talk. And hey, go on to TFLcard.com for more real-world reviews. You can find us on all the social medias, even Nathan.
Even me.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.